Welcome once again to Nova International, where Nova Ensemble welcomes visiting guest artists to Hong Kong, passing by Hong Kong and doing concerts in Hong Kong to our studio. But then, as you can see, this is a special edition once again because we are not at our studio. We are at the wonderful hotel stage in Jordan, where Exordium Collective, one of our invited guest groups for the Prism Chamber Music Festival 2019, is rehearsing for this week. And today I have with me Singaporean pianist Thomas Ang, who is visiting Hong Kong for the first time. So welcome to Hong Kong, Thomas.
Yes, I'm very glad to be here. That's very nice.
As you know, your visit actually coincided with one of the largest scale social movements that the city has witnessed in recent history. What's your first impression, and how has these few days of living actually inside a city and passing by different districts, how has that deepened your initial impression of the city?
I'm actually really impressed with all the stuff that's going on and all the stuff that's still going on despite the protests. Mm-hmm. The protests itself are super admirable. I wish more young people were like that, because the protests are too nice in Europe. Nothing gets done. So this is great. Yeah, I really like this. Even though the closest I've actually come to any of the protests was on opening night after the concert, when we exited the venue at U Stage, and the whole area was the whole area was cordoned off, roadblocks. I couldn't go back easily. I had to get a cab, and the driver was like, "If this is your first time, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I've decided it's a good thing. I really like this. This is good."
So you were born and raised in Singapore,
yes,
and you studied piano at a relatively young age.
6 years old, yes.
I'm very curious about what made you decide that you wanted to go to the Royal Academy of Music in UK rather than actually studying at the Yonsei Conservatory, which is one of the most renowned music schools in Asia, actually.
I wanted to get out of that little circle that I was already working in. I started doing a lot of chamber/accompaniment work when I was about 12. So by the time I was 19, and it was after A levels, you decide where you need to go. I decided I really wanted to go to Europe, and possibly the UK, possibly the US. I applied to a few schools, and then went to London to audition at the Royal College and the Royal Academy. Largely, this was a matter of the people I wanted to study with. So Hamish Milne at the Royal Academy, Emmanuel X at Juilliard, who didn't even give me a pre-screening. So whatever they say about you, don't care about that. Just do whatever you're down for doing. And then I somehow managed to get into the academy, and have enjoyed my time there hugely. I didn't get Hamish to study with Hamish right off, but I did get a year. I got into his studio for his last teaching year at the academy, and that has changed me a lot.
That must be amazing.
Yeah, it was really good.
Now, I think both of us can, because we both study at the Royal Academy, and we can both say the environment at the academy is really amazing. Yeah. It really opens up new doors and new understandings for music. But now you are known as a keen advocate of new music.
Yes.
And actually on your website, there's a line I'm reading from your website, that you are a versatile musician with a soft spot for obscure and neglected music. Now, did you develop this taste for the obscure and the neglected during UK, or actually, how did this happen?
It's a very strange thing. So I credit my first big piece of non-standard repertoire to my first piano teacher in Singapore, Miss Yap Chiu Yuan, who, when I was 14, dug out from her archives this piece by Kenneth Layton called Conflicts, Fantasy on Two Teams.
Yeah.
And somehow I really liked it, and I learned it, and I memorized it. And it's still actively in my repertoire. I haven't played it in a while, but I still have it quite under my fingers. It's great. Yeah. And from then on, I decided, that's really cool. I can do that. And among all the other things I was learning at that time, I decided to delve into things like recordings, online forums, and stuff like that to explore the outer reaches of what was considered standard repertoire,
Yeah.
and then slightly non-standard repertoire, and then weird stuff. And most people who listen to piano music follow, a very certain trajectory, which is like they listen to Marc-Andre Hamelin's recordings, and then therefore you get Godowsky, Alkan,
Yeah.
Busoni, things like that. But also that was how I developed my admiration for a lot of the Russian music that I currently play today, and for people like Hamish, of course, and Dmitry Alexeyev, who I had the fortune to meet, Nikolai Demidenko, which I haven't, Berezovsky, whose daughter actually studied at the same time as me at the academy, who I never got to meet either, and in particular the music of Kapustin, who I play a lot, and Medtner, who I'm starting to kind of really want to play all of. Yeah.
Now, so you talked about Kapustin.
Yes.
And of course you have a particular collaborative process and experience working with Kapustin. I think most people will be very interested how it all started.
I think calling it collaborative is very generous. I never got to meet him. I haven't. I'm pretty sure I will probably never meet him at this point. But I started because, like everyone else probably, I heard Hamelin plays music on a CD called In a State of Jazz. And that's great because the second sonata, which is recorded, was truly eye-opening. Like, it was incredible, full of energy, played extremely cleanly as is Hamelin's style. And so I started digging on forums and things like that for where you can get facsimiles that are floating around the internet.
Yeah.
This is of course illegal, but I've since then remedied that. Yes, it's all very, very much above board now. And then I came across some rare stuff that hadn't been recorded but was still getting passed around. The chief piece of which was the 7 polyphonic pieces for left hand. And at that point, I was playing a lot of Godowsky. I was learning a lot of left-hand music, so this fit right within my interests, an old interest and a growing new one.
Yep.
And so I studied them, put them up, put a couple up on YouTube, like crappy home recordings, like with the camera here and no face, just the hands on the piano to show that I wasn't cheating. Because it's just left hand, and as the years went past, I did a full Kapustin concert of chamber music in 2012, which was all new to Singapore, and then a solo piano thing in 2013, for which I messaged Kapustin's publisher to say I wanted to play these pieces. Is there anything like, do I have to pay royalty? How do I pay royalty in this case? And then and the reply was, he's seen your recordings. Go talk to him. Email.
Wow.
and then I was obviously extremely stunned. And so I emailed Kapustin, who doesn't speak English. He writes English, and he wrote me an email. And after a few more exchanges, he sent me a parcel of music. And it was incredible to hold this stuff that literally no one had seen before. There were a few newly published Japanese editions of stuff, some of which still haven't today been recorded, and the 19th and the 20th sonatas, and 2 loose pieces of music which I have since put on YouTube. But it was incredible because, I mean, his handwriting, if anyone has seen what Kapustin's scores look like, his handwriting is incredibly neat. And it was very, very small and quite dense on the score. And this was like super difficult music. And so I dove in because it was like no one else had played this stuff. Like, can you imagine how excited I was? And after a few months of slaving away, put together a program, brought it to Singapore, and then did a second one. And then for my master's year, I decided I did the second cello concerto, went and got a facsimile of the manuscript again, made the parts myself from scratch in Sibelius, got together an orchestra, found a soloist, found an incredible soloist, and now I'm editing my reduction of the piano part. I'm making it a reduction of the orchestra part for short music, which is great. So that's nice.
Probably with his blessing, right? I mean,
Hopefully
permission
so,
and
yes.
well, I'm sure most people would be so envious to be able to actually work with a famous living composer. But you actually, because of the fact that you're such a versatile pianist who actually plays in all kinds of different musical contexts, you actually not just work with composed in the solo music context, but actually you actually work in ensemble context as well with other composers, not composed in but others. And this draws us back to the Royal Academy, where you actually have played in the Academy's Contemporary Musical Ensemble, the Manson Ensemble.
Yes, Manson Ensemble.
And of course, we know that composers like John Adams and Oliver Knussen, who are composers but also conductors, have actually been at the Academy to work with the ensemble. And you being part of that, can you tell us some memorable moments from working with these composers, these actual personality, behind the photos that we see on Google and
So a quick note about John Adams, who I worked with only for one concert. He is an incredibly bubbly personality. All right, he kind of really friendly American old man with his typical American accent. And he conducts with this slight sway of the hips, so it all rocks out, and he uses the phrase "rocks out," and I think that's what his music is supposed to be like. Because apart from playing grand pianola music, which is the 2 piano and wind ensemble and 3 singers piece, I also got to play Hallelujah Junction for him privately with my piano duo partner. Joseph Havlat, yes. And I mean, the way he listens to exactly where, beneath that really friendly exterior, he absolutely knows what you're doing and you can't hide. And that's the same thing for Knussen. Because there was one very, very funny story where I got my schedule mixed up, and I thought the rehearsal was going to be the next week. And it was Monday at 1 p.m. and I hadn't looked at the music. I hadn't even got it from the office. So I went to the office. I got my piano part out. This was coursing, Knussen's coursing, which is a fun piece to say the least. And I looked at the first 3 pages, and it was just like
rhythmic and fast,
but single line. And I thought, okay, that's fine. 3 pages of this stuff. The rest of it should be kind of the same. I didn't have time to go to a piano room, and so I turned up at the first reading, and I turned the first page, played the second. I could follow, rhythms fine. I turned the next page, and there was a 3-line piano solo, for which I was like,
you weren't expecting that.
Okay, I have to do this properly. Tried my best, and then he stopped the orchestra and looked at me and he said, I can see the notes you're supposed to be playing, but all I hear is mincemeat. And then I went and practiced like hell. But that is an incredible Knussen story. I miss working with him a lot, actually, because he has the way he listens to things and just balances like winds versus harp or something. Just knows exactly when the notes stop, where something in a chord is not right, and how he listens to things is, I wish I could do that. That is incredible.
That leads us to the reason why you're here at Hotel tonight, because you're playing a very, very interesting program of almost all contemporary pieces.
They are all contemporary.
They are all contemporary pieces. Yes, they are. And one of the pieces is actually exactly what I just said. It's just all clusters by Galina Ustvolskaya.
Yes.
So why don't you introduce that piece and then go through the rest of the program for us?
Okay, so Ustvolskaya kind of stands quite alone in the late 20th century as being kind of post-Shostakovich. Like, she's known as Shostakovich's student, but Shostakovich later then said, it was not me who influences you, in fact, you are the one who influences me. And she did. Her early work, of course, sounds like Shostakovich because that's what you do when you're learning from someone as great as that. But after she started writing, her kind of really quite different from anyone else. She was not doing anything like the other great Soviet woman composer. Everyone says Gubadulina, but Ustvolskaya was doing all these things with obsessively extremely regular shapes, big sounds, huge contrasts in dynamic, and extremely unusual forces. I think almost everything she acknowledged as having written either contained piano or percussion or both.
Or double basses, double basses.
And yes, in one incredible case, 8 double basses and a huge Mahler-style hammer. And that was what she did. She was like extremely obsessive in a very kind of like Russian death machine way that people like to talk about Prokofiev's 7th Sonata, the war machine cranking up.
Yeah.
Something like that. There's something quite horrifying in that, and I like it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like American minimalism, which is kind of just like pretty, you know.
Yeah.
There's grit and real kind of either anger or just
blood, toil,
just the feeling of beating your head against a wall 750 times. You know, I've decided in this particular program, because so much contemporary music involves playing in the piano.
Yeah.
I've decided not to. So I've chosen a series of pieces, the earliest of which is actually Ustvolskaya Sonata from 1988. And all of them are played the regular way at the keyboard. So I start with Elliott Carter, play some Boulez, Ansis, which I love a lot, and then go into 2 of Unsuk Chin's etudes.
Very challenging.
They are really hard.
Yeah.
And then the Ustvolskaya Sonata. No, and then Takemitsu Litany, which is the one bit of piece before I destroy the piano.
And probably retune it.
Yes, and then a piece by a good friend of mine, whose music I've also played, Alexander Brussensev. And these pieces I've chosen because I genuinely believe that they should be standard repertoire in the same way that Chopin, Liszt, Beethoven are standard repertoire. I feel like there's a slightly didactic dimension to the program I'm choosing, but I think that pianists should willingly... I mean, this music is self-selecting, right? Only people who really want to play the music do this. But I feel like more people should, just because it's so good. And there is emotion in the music. There is color, there is structure, there's everything you get in, you know, a Mozart concerto, a Mozart sonata in this music. And there is no excuse for anyone not to play it if they are living in 2019 and playing the piano. I think this is genuinely what I believe.
The other concert that you'll be playing during your stay in the Prism Chamber Music Festival is happening this Sunday on the 13th, on Sunday at 8 o'clock in Chaiwan U Square, where you'll be playing 6 Asian premieres of pieces by young composers who actually asked you to do a lot inside the piano.
Yes, I'm basically inside the piano for the whole concert, that's right.
And you're playing the keyboard is like the last requirement on the checklist. Yeah?
Yes, there's like a few notes and so much stuff inside the keyboard. It's basically a percussion instrument at this point.
Yep.
So
and the percussionist actually has to come to the piano and play inside as well.
Yes, yes.
So why don't you just, without spoiling everyone, just give us a teaser of what you will actually be doing inside the piano.
Oh God. Okay, so
you have the regular stop notes and
regular
harmonics
stop notes,
and
harmonics,
multiphonics.
Multiphonic harmonics, which are quite cool and actually piano dependent. So I've had to coax this instrument a little bit. There's also plucking, and then at certain points I'm using things that really shouldn't see the inside of the piano, because you have to, like, technicians go nuts when they see this stuff. So there's a bunch of bicycle inner tubes in there, cut up into tiny pieces. I've marked several strings with blue tack and stuff like that, but that's really the least of what's happening. So I'm in there for a good 90% of the music, I believe. So that's nice.
Before we say goodbye, why don't you tell us about your next project after the PCMF?
Oh God. Okay, so I've prepared, in particular, a lot of Russian music from the turn of the 20th century that still isn't played. It's more like, it's like my obscure and neglected part. This is where I indulge myself and play obscure music. So there's a couple concerts where I've prepared music by Kapustin, but also Alexander Goldenweiser, who was his teacher, and known as one of the greatest Russian chamber pianists of his era, I'm playing a few piano pieces by him because they are strange. They're like really strange. And then I found enough Russian piano music in B flat minor to form one evening program.
The only one I think about is Rachmaninoff's now.
I'm not actually playing any Rachmaninoff on that program.
You're skipping that.
So several
Yeah.
Russian pieces in B flat minor.
Right.
And also after that, Lyadov, Lyapunov,
Yeah.
Golden Weiser Kapustin, Medtner, lots of Medtner. I can't think of anything, but if something crosses my path, it's probably going to end up on a program. So that's for January.
And from Hotel Stage, we say to you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.